At 7 o'clock. We do have a quorum.
Do you mind doing a roll call for attendance purposes, please? Since we have one remote.
Sure.
I'm here.
Just announce who's here. Okay, so today we have President Magnuson, Chairperson Klein, Josh Ray, Lori Lyons, Jay Hedges, Ryan Krajewski.
Online.
Online. And there are no citizen comments that I'm aware of.
Unless you're hiding somewhere.
Okay, so I would like to table the minutes. Good news is I found my notes from a year ago. Bad news is it was too late to have the minutes ready for the meeting. So we're going to table the minutes and we will do those with the minutes from this meeting on Monday. So I make a motion to table the minutes until next meeting on March 8th.
Second.
Oh, yeah.
Krajewski.
Aye.
Fine, aye. Motion passes 2-0. Okay, and on to the 2021 budget review. I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Lyons for a water and sewer fund review.
All right.
Exciting stuff.
Yeah, exciting stuff. So let me see if I can share my screen. I'm going to remove my mask if that's okay. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is a quick review of the water fund budget and then the sewer fund, and then we will come back and do the fiscal year 22 budget for this particular funds. So as you can see, the revenue is a little bit less than projected as compared to budget. However, I don't believe that we will need to do the water sewer improvement charge transfers that were planned in fiscal year 21, simply because the entire village has been on the austerity program and not spending unless necessary. So we expect our revenue to come in just over $1 million, which is good. Our water sales are strong. We do have some accounts receivable that may be deemed uncollectible at the end of the year, but we always adjust for anything that's over 90 days out anyway, as the potential for not being able to collect. So we're really quite on schedule, if you will, as far as revenue is concerned.
Lori, 1 second.
Yep.
Trustee Klein, could you please acknowledge that Trustee Kelly is now with us online?
Yes, in attendance online. Trustee Kelly, hello.
Hello, good evening.
All right, then we'll go through the fiscal year 21 projected expenses. We'll just hit the highlights here. So wages and benefits are really very much expected to be on track with budget. We have the same personnel that we anticipated in place, so there's really no big changes there. As far as contractual services, our utilities were quite a bit less than expected, so that was a bonus. When we're talking about utilities, within the utilities, that's actually the Commonwealth Edison and NICOR gas, electric and gas expenses that are used to run the facilities. So contractual services are projected to end under the budgeted expenses for fiscal year 21. With respect to commodities, there is in the operating supplies, we added Oracle to the water at the end of 2020. And that was not included at 100% in the budget for fiscal year 21. So that's the reason for that particular line item being over. That is going to continue to be added to the water, but we are reducing that a little bit when we talk about fiscal year 22.
Can you remind me what Oracle is?
Oracle is a chemical that I
Takes out
believe,
something.
yes, I believe it takes out some of the bad minerals that are in the water.
Okay.
I don't want to say the wrong one. Yes.
I was gonna say lead, but I don't think it's lead.
Barium,
Barium? Ooh, yeah.
That's
very high barium in this area.
our debt service is right on track as expected. And then at this time, our meters and equipment is not as great as expected. That has to do with there was a meter expense in there of $55,000, which was for additional commercial meters, which we just haven't had those expenses. So we actually expect to have expenses in excess of revenue of $35,765. Kind of gauge our water and sewer funds together. They're reported together, and so therefore we'll look at the sewer and you'll see how we kind of get offsetting revenue to this particular expense. So again, the big changes are not transferring the water and sewer capital improvement charge in this area. So any questions about the fiscal year 21 with respect to water?
On the first page, line 3350, says valve exerciser and software. And then on the third page, 4960 also says valve exerciser and software. Is that a different situation, why they're both listed there and there's valve exerciser and software? Because both line items are a lot higher than they were the year before.
Hang on. Are you talking about fiscal year 22?
Yeah, the capital outlay under 4960 on the third page. The very end says valve exerciser and software in the notes.
Yes.
And then that same description is on 3350.
Yeah, I was curious. Yeah, are we going to talk fiscal 22 later, or are we? I guess to Jeff's point, I had some questions too about that stuff.
Okay, 1 minute, Ryan.
One's under water revenue. Okay. The 33 line item 30 ending at 3350, 140,000.
Yes. So when we get to fiscal year 22, we will talk about a transfer from the capital improvement fund, the $20 fee that you have on your water and sewer bill, to pay for some of the capital expenditures that are in this budget for 22. Do you want to go through the 22 budget, or would you prefer to go to the sewer fund first and do 21?
Whatever the chairperson desires.
Why don't we deal with water?
Okay, let's deal with water. All right, so let's go through the 22 budget.
Hold on 1 second. Ryan, did you have questions on current fiscal year?
Yeah, it was the kind of where we're going to talk about 22 now. We're going to come back to it. That was my only question, but it seems like everyone has the same question. So,
Water.
yeah,
We're doing all water now.
okay, that works for me.
So with respect to the water fund revenue for fiscal year 22, we will have a rate increase of 1.1%. That's based on the Chicago, Naperville, Elgin CIP increase. That is an ordinance increase that automatically happens each year, starting with the July billing. We're going to also institute a meter exchange program that's going to increase the accuracy of water usage, especially aimed at commercial users. Any meter over 15 years old is expected to have about a 10 to 20% inaccuracy. So we do expect to have additional revenue through this meter exchange program.
Is that the one that Dave just, or Mark just did the test?
Yes.
And it came back that they were very inaccurate?
So that's, the residential piece is a little bit different.
Okay.
So the commercial piece, we expect to be, quite inaccurate. I don't really expect that on the residential side, but we are just in the process of testing that, and we will continue to do a little bit more testing on those.
If I could just add a little bit, Laura. First of all, after 15 to 20 years, we should expect a 10 to 15% meter under reading for residential and commercial. Elgiloy happens to use water in their production process, so they use 1.5 million gallons a month, I think. So they're going to see a substantial increase because we did replace their meter and it's going to go way up already. We expect to see something similar at residential level, 10 to 15% higher reading if the meter's more than 15 years old. But we have not done that. Mark has not completed that study yet. He's just experimenting with 10, I think, including your house.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So on the commercial meter replacement program, is that mandated that they will replace it, or are we hoping they pay to replace the meters?
So it's up to us to replace the meters. We own the meters, so it's up to us to pay for replacing them. We did an ROI. I asked Mark to do an ROI, gave him a formula, and it turned out that Elgiloy's meter, which costs about $3,000, paid for itself in 1.5 months, based on the estimates that we had of 10 to 15% water loss. Once we installed it, I think Lori's already, we haven't had a meter reading.
We did.
Yeah.
We have 13 days on our last billing cycle with them, and their water usage was up about 34%.
Oh.
Yeah, so we were missing a lot of billing on Elgiloy, but when we looked at the other, what we believe are roughly the top 10 businesses, none of them are anywhere near that much. WR Meadows and some others. If you don't use water in the production process, then really it's just bathrooms and that sort of thing.
Right.
So we took the highest water users first, and we'll replace them based on our ROI in 6 months or less, Trustee Kelly. If the ROI is less than 6 months, we'll replace the meter. And then when we get the 10 residential meters replaced, then we'll have that's just a pilot program for 22. And then once we see the results of that, we may come back in 23 and ask to replace more meters.
Okay, so the additional revenue is based on us replacing the meter and the loss being realized. Okay, that helps. I thought it was on meter sales, and I'm like, I don't understand that, but this helps. Thanks.
The meter sales that are reflected in the revenue are for residential meters for new homes.
Yeah.
Okay, and then as Jeff was pointing out, there is $140,000 included in water sewer improvement charges that are being transferred to the water fund to help fund capital improvements. This includes surge suppression at well 13 as well as well number 9, well 7's media exchange, and then the valve exerciser and software that will allow us to map where all of the valves are here in the village.
If I could just add one thing to that. This is something that came up at the Public Works Committee a year ago. And Mark, at that time, we did not have the funds for it. So this year, Mark proposed to bring in a company to do the valve exercising, but it was going to be $28,000 just for them to come in one time. So this would pay for itself in less than 2 years just to go ahead and buy the new one.
Any revenue questions?
Yeah, Lori, on the budget for this fiscal year, we had 125,000 for the improvement for line 3350 and no actual, and then 140 for next year's budget. So did we not transfer anything over in this year's budget? Did we end up not doing that? And we're just saying it's the 125 plus the additional 15 for the 140 next year?
That's correct. So I don't anticipate having to make any transfers at all, just because we have been in like huge cost saving mode. So some of our large capital expenditures that were expected just have not been realized this year, since we were saving money because of the pandemic. Okay,
She can't see you nodding, trustee Kelly, so.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that works. And so even without the 125,000 coming over that we budgeted for the capital, we're only 64,000 down on the year then, projected.
Right,
Okay.
35, I think, actually, 35.
Well, for the bottom line, I'm sorry, I was just doing that top level expense that we were
Yes,
on. Or
yes,
the top level revenue we were on.
yeah.
That includes the CARES Act.
Not in
Different
this
funds,
budget.
sorry.
Okay, moving on to the expense side. We have we will be reclassifying some of our employees. Sean Horn is currently recorded in the water fund, and he is being trained for wastewater operations and to become a certified wastewater treatment operator. Tony Bacara, who's been with the village for a number of years, will be split between water and sewer. He is really our mechanical guru on the utility side, and so he will split his time tinkering with the equipment on both water and wastewater. And then we also are calling for an additional headcount in the utility department. This would be 50% absorbed by the water fund and 50% absorbed by the sewer fund. That individual would come in as a starting laborer, if you will, and be split between the two, learning both systems. Any questions with respect to wages and benefits? I do expect the overall salaries in the utility department to be up overall about 8.3% on average. The math doesn't look exactly like that, but when you look at prior to reclassifications and those types of things, that's the average increase that we're looking at.
The total dollar amount of the average increase.
That's the average increase. Any questions with respect to wages and benefits? Okay, what I tried to do in the next sections are summarize what's going on or any of the big changes. If you have a question about a particular line item, I'm going to go to a different spreadsheet to look up the details. But if Mark had specifically put something down in the comments section, they are in the column all the way to the right. So our big initiatives here are adding the transvoltage surge suppression to the wells, which will help one of our pretty big vulnerabilities as far as reliable service to our residents. We are going to replace the media at well number 7, which is kind of on its last leg. That particular drinking water treatment plant has been in service since, I believe, 1995 without media replacement, and generally it lasts about 10 years, they say. So we've gotten really good use out of that, but it's just time to get that replaced. And if you're wondering why TVSS, which is transvoltage surge suppression, is in maintenance equipment and in maintenance utility system, the equipment is located like at a plant versus the utility system is like out in the field. It's a little bit easier to understand when you're talking about the wastewater treatment plant. So if something were in the equipment area, it would be actually at the wastewater treatment plant versus out in the utility system, like a lift station that's out in the field.
If I could just add to that one point, I think this is probably one of our biggest vulnerabilities as a village is our lack of surge protection for water and sewer facilities. I met with Mark 3 times in the last month, including just this week, last week with FABCon. And so you're going to see that we're upgrading quite a bit of our equipment, including some other items, but our surge protection is a really critical tool to protect our equipment.
All right. Let's see. Don't think anything else really stands out in that particular area. We expect our expenses to go up because of those capital items that are being addressed. Overall, we're adding over $142,000 in capital improvements through the water operating fund here.
And Lori, what is the increase in communication services for? It's
I'll address
big.
that. That's also having to do with, that's for the VAVCON equipment, SCADA equipment. We're moving from radios to both cell service and internet, depending on which is available. The radios were very vulnerable and we lost signals quite a bit. So this is the last of 2 years of upgrading in our communication system. This allows the various well sites, water, sewage treatment, and the main plants to communicate with each other. And in talking to Vince just last week from VAVCON, he's created what he calls a tunnel. So we can communicate internally. I would call it an intranet, but it's fully protected from outside, so it cannot be hacked.
Okay.
In fact, just last week, you may recall there was a water system in Florida, I believe, that was hacked. And Toby asked for an update on that, and we were able to give him that we're, I hate to say 100% hack free because somebody could get it at the system from internally, but we are protected, very well protected. And finishing up that communication system is real important this year.
Okay.
Lori, what's the current balance of the water and sewer capital fund? So the extra fee that every resident pays for capital projects, what's the fund, or what's the balance in that fund available for these type of capital projects?
So I don't have the balance of that fund available this evening, but I will tell you that that fund generates about $360,000 in revenue each year. So we're well within our spending limits with respect to that. But yeah, I'll have that for you next time when we talk about the capital funds.
Okay.
All right. And then we talked briefly about the commodities when we were talking about fiscal year 21. As far as the operating supplies, that is down from this year just because of timing. However, we do expect that to be quite a bit greater than the budget last year. So any questions with respect to that? Okay, we're going to just zoom ahead then onto the next page. Our debt service is going down. I know this is going to be a question for everybody, but our bond payments are not equally spread across the terms of the bonds, and so therefore that is a variable amount. It's actually going down this particular year. So that's that. And then with respect to the meters and equipment, we do have in there the allowance for an additional 10 residential meter exchanges to continue to test and see whether or not there will be return on investment for doing residential meter exchanges. And then we have the valve exerciser and software in here as an expense for equipment, as well as an allowance for meter exchanges in this area. So, any questions?
Oh, we got all mine.
Yeah, just at a high level question, Lori, your overall analysis. I know we're transitioning or adding 140,000 in the budget of revenue for transition of the capital project or capital funds over. Yes. Right? That's that top level. With that coming over, we're still budgeting about a $62,000 deficit in here.
Yes.
What is it that is driving that deficit? Because that's a higher budgeted deficit than the year before. So I'm just curious on your evaluation, what is the main driver of that?
It is definitely the fact that we are doing over $140,000 in capital improvements. So that's much greater than was planned for this current fiscal year.
No, I'm sorry, I was talking about the FY22 budget.
Yeah, if I could just address that real briefly. When we get to the sewer fund, you're going to see that the water and sewer fund balance out. you'll see a similar surplus to offset that $62,000. And that's what we typically do every year, is try and make sure the water and sewer funds balance together. Right, Corey? And let me just take a second, because I know there's going to be some capital questions. We will be presenting to you next week a capital budget. We've been working on that for quite a while. And you're going to see the expenses, but you'll see noted in the column to the right, whether it's CIP. If it's noted CIP in this budget, then you'll see it in the first year of our 3-year capital budget, which you'll see next Monday. Okay? And I think we're about to jump to the sewer. So you'll see that surplus offsetting the 62,000 now.
Okay, understood. Thanks.
All right. With respect to sewer fund revenue, our sewer fund is revenue is driven right directly off of the water fund revenue, in the sense that we use the water usage to calculate our sewer fees. Again, this will go up by 1.1%. We're going to be transferring approximately $40,000 from the water and sewer improvement fee capital fund to the sewer fund for some of their capital improvements. Any questions with respect to sewer revenue?
Penalties just assume percentage based on total charges, correct?
It is, yes.
Okay.
All right. On to the sewer fund expenses. Again, we have reclassification, Sean moving to the sewer fund and splitting Tony and the new headcount that is shared between the two funds. I didn't mention it before, but our health insurance expenses are going up about 8.5% overall this year. So you'll see that in the various funds with respect to our benefit charges. Again, as Jay mentioned, we are addressing the vulnerability to surges in our electrical systems. So we will be adding surge suppression to all 5 lift stations that don't have surge protection right now. That includes Lakewood, the Prairie Lift Station, Metrix Industrial Park's new lift station, McDonald's, and the lift station out at Elgeloy. So again, that's split kind of between maintenance. I believe actually that might be, yeah, I think that is all in the lift stations are considered utility system versus being on site at the wastewater treatment plants. One of the other things that is noted on here is the fact that the grinder that we would like to obtain for to help alleviate some of the masks and rags and those types of things that are cobbling up the lift stations is actually going to be in the CIP budget that you will see soon, but not in this particular budget.
Lori, if I could just interject.
Certainly.
So what you're seeing in some of these cases in the operating budget is some items are being paid for, some capital items are being paid for out of the operating budgets. But for the most part, we have separate capital funds for both water and sewer, and then for other departments as well. So some of the items will be in the operating budget and some of them will just be in the capital budget. Excuse me, spending from the capital funds.
Laura, you may have covered this, so I apologize if I'm asking a dumb question. The 4160 maintenance utility system, not for the FY22, I understand that's 4 new lift system pumps. But for FY21, what was the $72,000 unbudgeted spend that we're looking at? Because we're projecting to spend over double what was budgeted for the year, and I'm just curious with the additional almost 4 times requested spend for this coming year, what that variance was.
So we had one of the big Moino pumps, I believe, had to be rehabbed. That was an unplanned expense. We also did put surge suppression in at the lift station in Higgins when we had a big power issue there last fall. So,
Okay, so they were more of reactive fixes that had to happen because of failures, not a proactive.
Yes, I would say emergency situations that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, we're trying to be on the austerity program. When we have an emergency, we do have to spend.
In fact, that's just about all you'll see spending in those items is emergency spending, because we held back on anything that we could in capital.
Yep. Yeah, understood. I just saw that, and then the 4 new pumps. So I was trying to understand.
Yeah, no, it's a good question.
There are 2 pumps at the McDonald's lift station and 2 pumps at Algeloy, and they both are scheduled to be replaced in this budget. Those are the lift station pumps that are going to be replaced. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to bring up a point. You had said something about an 8% increase in our insurance costs.
Yes.
But I noticed we've got is it 87% increase budgeted for 2022? Is that, I know the salary looks like it's going up as well by 49%. I'm assuming is that the just increase in the extra employee that you plan on adding, their insurance costs?
It's a result of both reclassifications. So we have some of the higher cost employees. We are on an Affordable Care Act plan. So each individual has their own premium. So if you're older or have a larger family, you know, your cost is, the village's cost is higher. And so it is, it's based on that, as well as I really don't know if the new person is going to be single and young or older.
Right.
Family. So I've, you know, kind of done an average with respect to that as well. So those are your reasons that adds up.
We're not allowed to ask them how old they are, but the Affordable Care Act is health insurance is now fully, the premiums are based solely on age. So it's a little hard to predict who you're going to hire.
Sure.
Without discriminating.
Okay.
All right. Expecting really no major changes in commodities, so I think I'll just kind of pass over that. There are some additional maintenance supplies. If you're interested, I can, that's going closer to the actual budgeted amounts versus our actual spend, which was reduced quite a bit this fiscal year. Any questions with respect to that? And then the last thing that we have, well, I guess not exactly the last, but we have our debt service and a transfer from the sewer fund to help pay for administrative expenses here at Village Hall. So our IEPA loan is nearing the end, so that's a bonus. You'll see we're only paying $11,000 in interest next year. That loan will be finished in 2025. And then the equipment and vehicles that is shown there is a new pickup truck with a service body and equipped with plowing equipment to assist in plowing the various facilities. That is a 20% down payment and then 9 payments on the truck that's going to be financed for 5 years.
Or can I just add one thing there?
Certainly.
You're going to hear that quite a bit in the budget, both here and in the general fund, particularly in the police department. Rather than outlaying these big dollar amounts, I believe a couple of years ago, we paid $170 for 2 different snow plows. What we're doing is financing all the vehicles and leveling out the payments. So that it'll be similar to bond debt service will be the debt service on our equipment. I should say rolling stock. So that's what you see here is, in most cases, it's a 20 down payment plus the first year of payments.
Okay.
And Jay, we can enter into that type of agreement for vehicles, but not for property or buildings. Is that correct?
Exactly. We can use equipment for collateral, but we cannot have a mortgage where we use a building for collateral.
Oh, okay. All right.
Any questions? This does show, Aaron, the offsetting revenue to kind of balance these two funds out.
You see the $63,000 surplus in 22 there, Trustee Kelly?
I do, yeah. 63,185.
Right.
Yep.
I think
So
that
are we really budgeting to an excess? Sorry, I'm just looking at the projected too, because that's a huge number, and I think a testament to the reduction in spending, but it still, I guess, carries over cash balances. Are we really projecting to be in excess of $320,717 at the end of this fiscal year?
That's the expectation as of right now.
Okay.
Good.
And so one of the things that you don't see here, and the reason why I do not have fund balance reflected on here is it's a little bit more of a calculation. So we take all of our water and sewer funds and combine them together for reporting purposes. This fund has all the assets of the water fund. The sewer fund has, or excuse me, this has all the assets of the sewer fund. The water fund has all the assets of the water fund. And we don't reflect depreciation in here, so it's a little bit of a different calculation with respect to what exactly your fund balance is. It looks like you're making a lot of money, but that would get taken away right away if I showed you depreciation. So I know that's not a cash expenditure, but we have to keep in mind that we do need to, this would be fantastic if we end like this to roll that forward to the next year for additional capital purchases.
what you are seeing though, before we move to the general fund, is I think I spent quite a bit of time in December and January with Mark, particularly after quite a few scares out in the real world about water and sewer systems. Also several emergency repairs that we had to make this year, including swapping out variable speed drive pumps, immersible variable speed drive motors and pumps, which are very expensive. And in some cases, we don't have a backup. So we've really challenged Mark to tell us what he needs to have a safe system and reliable system. So you've seen quite a bit of spending already here, and you'll see some more capital spending in the capital budget. This is an area where we do have the revenue, thanks to Lori and the village board's austerity over the last 8 years. Our water and sewer fund are in really good shape. In spite of this last year, this particular fund was not impacted hardly at all by COVID. So this is an area where I felt like we really need to beef up our security and the reliability of our equipment. We're also looking at replacing the core operating system called Wonderware. Not the best name for marketing purpose, I would say, but I don't have any trouble remembering it, so that does help.
It's super popular, honestly, in industrial space. It is.
Yeah, it is. They also operate similar for factories that Brian's obviously aware of. But this is something that the village has had since about 2003, I think. It was purchased before we were working with VAFCON. Vince does help us with that now. We simply bought one license, which operates from the main office. And then, but it's what now, 17-year-old software. It has not been upgraded at all. We didn't purchase any of the upgrades. So we're looking into upgrading Wonderware to its newest version and also a separate program called Ignition, which is something I think Vince and Mark probably prefer. But there was no need to upgrade it this particular year. That'll probably be next year. And we're talking at a $25,000 to $30,000 cost to upgrade the entire operating system for the water and sewer department. If you've had a tour, it's a really great system. We have touch screens. Some of those touch screens have failed, so we're going to be replacing 3 of those in this budget. Yeah, we've got a real good handle. I'll share with you after the meeting a picture of a chart that Mark put on the board over there on the whiteboard, kind of how the whole system comes together. And Mark really has a good understanding. I've learned to become very impressed with Mark's skills and also with Vince's from VAFCON. I would say we're in very good hands. Vince, I know there's been some concern about Vince having a small company, but he does work for some very large companies, and he now has a succession plan, and he's really established himself as a company. He does have, I think, 8 contract employees, so he's not a one-man operation.
So I have a question for Christine and Ryan, and I don't know if this is for the finance committee to consider or how we would approach this, but I know in board meetings, we've had conversations, and I know in the industry, it's a larger conversation about COVID debt, utility debt relief, COVID utility debt forgiveness programs, or whatever that may be, right? If we're looking at a 320K projected surplus, right now 118K surplus, is it our like, would we want to make a recommendation? Would we want to share this information with the board to consider in this fiscal year some type of water and sewer debt relief program for COVID impact, knowing that right now we have a lot of outstanding unpaid bills from residential customers on that? Is that something we can even talk about? I don't know, but I look at the surplus and I wonder if that's something that can justify that conversation then.
We could, there would have to be, you know, parameters established for.
Do we have a large increase in unpaid bills?
We really don't. It's amazingly, not a big increase.
Okay, I thought the meeting we had, it was brought up, we did have some.
This week,
It's
so.
come from 20 to 80,000,
Mm,
unless it's come down recently.
yeah,
The answer, Trustee Kelly, is you could definitely do that. I'd like for Lori to be able to get updated numbers for you. I do know that it grew. At the last time I checked, which I think was about 6 weeks ago, at the last billing cycle, we had about $80,000 past due. And from memory, I believe that about 25 to 30,000 of that is what we would commonly call regulars that are typically past due. But I would say that our past due, I'm just going to go in from memory, I think it may have somewhat doubled. So we do have some new people, but I'd like to get some better information. We just completed a billing cycle, so Lori should be able to share with us, if not in the next couple of days, certainly by next Monday's meeting, exactly where we are with that. But you could certainly do that. The board has the authority to do that.
And I would tell you that that's probably a board discussion, not necessarily a finance committee discussion.
Okay. I just didn't know if this was information, Christine, that we would take to the board to say if that discussion were to occur, here's what the balance looks like, or if that's just something Lori would provide in the discussion. I want to make sure to follow the right protocol, or even if it is a discussion we bring up, I don't know.
Yeah, let's get some numbers on that and we can talk about it again. Okay, any other questions on water sewer?
Mm-mm.
Okay. How about the general fund?
let's go to the general fund.
If I could just take a minute while Lori's changing her screen, you all received my email over the weekend. And I want to say that when we were going through the budget this year as staff, we went through the water and sewer budgets, and you can see they support themselves with their own dedicated revenue. And I just asked the open question to all of us sitting here in this room, what can we do with the general fund to put it in a similar funding method so that it regularly generates enough revenue to support itself. The big hit you're going to see, which Lori's talked about before at board meetings, is a $360,000 increase in pension funding, which is more than double. So the only thing I would like you to think about while we're going through this budget is that we have transferred into this budget about $500,000 from the motor fuel tax fund to pay for street salaries. That is approved. When you look at motor fuel tax purposes for funding purposes, you can purchase salt with it, you can pay street salaries with it, and you can make road reconstruction projects with it. Those are the primary uses. Did I miss anything, Lori?
You can pay debt service there,
Yeah.
there's.
But that's an allowable use. It's just not something that we here in Hampshire have traditionally done, is use our motor fuel tax funds for salaries. But this year, when I looked at a $500,000 deficit, 360,000 of which was police pension fund that you'll see in a minute, it just didn't, it's not sustainable. We're going to continue to deplete our fund or else have to transfer in from other funds. So for this 1 year, we did what we consider a stopgap. And then we've recommended, we brought forward in my email to you, I've mentioned the 1% sales tax. There are other potential revenue sources out there, like a streaming tax on things like Netflix. There's a game, what is called a push tax for gaming for every quarter that's put into electronic gambling machines. So there are some other revenue sources that I'd like to share with you over the next few months as we talk about future years. But I just want you to realize that the general fund is not sustainable at its current level. We'd actually had a request for an additional police officer. And for every police officer that we hire right now, we have to take 50% of their salary and budget that for pension funds in the same year. So if we went out and hired a $75,000 police officer, he would cost us about 125 to 30,000 plus 50% of his salary for pension every year for the next 20 years. So it's really, the police pension is a big problem, but our general fund in general is not sustainable at its current level. So having said that, just a brief introduction, then Lori, jump in, unless there's questions about that.
Didn't we talk about doing a referendum?
Mhm.
What we talked about a year ago was doing a referendum for police pensions as a property tax increase, which would be 100% paid by our residents. This time what we've considered, and I can tell you that Geneva and Elburn are the two communities in our area. There's about 100 communities statewide, as maybe 50, somewhere between 50 and 100 communities statewide, non-home rule communities that have enacted anywhere from 1/4 to 1% of a sales tax. And in most communities, the sales tax, in Geneva, they said it was roughly 50% of their sales tax is paid by people outside the village, coming into the shop in the village. I would suggest that there's no scientific way of knowing this, but our truck stops generate a lot of our sales tax. And I'm going to suggest that maybe 70% of our sales tax in the village is paid by people outside of our village. So it would be a way to raise funds by referendum, but would primarily be paid for people outside the village. So I think that's why it'd be more popular than a property tax.
Geneva did pass it?
Yes, they passed the 1% in, I believe, in 2018 was the second one. I think they did a 0.5% a few years prior to that, maybe 2012 even.
Strictly to fund the police pension?
No, I don't recall for sure.
So there was a law change, a statute change that allows you now to use it for operations and infrastructure. So, operations, this is part of operations, so.
I'm not suggesting that any other communities have done it strictly for police pension, because I think that's just become a problem for a lot of us in the last year, since January of 20 was when that law went into effect. And some other communities may not have been hit nearly as hard as we were. We just got caught at a really bad timing because of IMRF and the tier 1 and tier 2. But it's not going to go away anytime soon unless the legislature gives us until 2050 to be fully funded instead of 2040. That will help a little bit, but it's just prolonging the inevitable. So I'm really asking the board to consider other alternative sources of revenue that may be somewhat palatable to our community. Ryan, you and I talked about a sales tax on gasoline about a year ago also. So we're looking into all those things. That right now, this anywhere from a 1% increase in sales tax, I believe, Lori, about 650, right?
About 7.
Yeah, about $700,000 would be a 1% increase, because that's our share of the state tax now. So it'd be the exact same 1% that we get now. But it would be levied by the state, collected by the state, and then distributed back to us. Or you can do it in increments at 25%, 50%, sorry, 25, 1/4%, 0.5%, 3/4, or 1%.
And to clarify, that's not like the current motor fuel tax where it doesn't matter how many how many gas stations and stuff we have, we basically divide that out of the state based on population. This would be specific to us, correct?
Yes, this is point of sale.
Good. Okay. Oh, this would be different, but okay.
Yeah, this would be distributed based on where they sell it. We collect money from where it's sold, as opposed to motor fuel tax where they buy all the gas from us, but it's distributed based on population.
Right.
Through the local government distributed fund.
Okay, thank you.
All right, just to hit the highlights of the revenue now. So I guess we need to do 21 really quick.
Are you gonna screen share?
Oh, sorry. We must have zapped. All right.
Good job. Be pro.
So we want to zip through fiscal year 21.
Yes,
Um,
please.
as you know, our revenue is down, of course, because of the effects of COVID. With respect to property taxes, I do expect one tiny distribution yet to come through. The tax sale was held in early February. So I believe the county will be distributing any proceeds from the sale of taxes very soon. So our revenue is slightly under budget as far as property taxes for this year at this
You really blew that budget off almost $100.
Intergovernmental revenue, our big areas that are down with respect to that include sales tax. Let's see, our telecom tax is lower than I expected it to be. That is a Hampshire estimate, so I was off on that. Our video gaming is down towards the bottom of this page. Although it did come back with a vengeance when it came back to Christmas, we're hoping that it, reopening that will come back strong again as well.
I just wanted to use it.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I meant to look up what 2019 video gaming income was and I forgot. Just to see what the difference was.
I know last year we were down about 8% compared to budget, and I think that was because, you know, in a month and a half, we lost 8%. So it was crazy when they allowed us to open back up. There was like gambling like crazy, and then it got shut back down again. So you know, like I said, we're just hoping that it gets back. I did leave it down a little bit because I know that there are some people that are still hesitant to, you know, to participate in those types of activities at this point, but we hope that really comes back.
You look at the state numbers, gaming is crazy since it reopened late January.
Josh, you have a number from last year?
It was 95,000 projected at 9 months. It was projected at 95,000 for the whole year.
So we do have, you know, a few extra machines because they allowed additional ones at the truck stop, and yep, Jimmy's is open, so we do have additional establishments online as well.
There is talk about them increasing the maximum number. Is it 8 at the truck stops now?
It's 10.
10. There's talk about it, increasing the numbers at the bars potentially to 8 and maybe the truck stops to 12. But no, I don't know. I think that would, that's been out there for since COVID started to kind of recover some of that lost revenue. But the state obviously needs it as bad or worse than we do.
Okay, and then with respect to the next category of income, the one that's down quite a bit, but actually stronger really than I anticipated, is our places for eating tax. We had budgeted the 2% increase and then decided not to bring that forward just because of the situation. So when we discuss the 22 budget, we do we'll be asking the board to increase that to 2%.
And just a reminder to all of you that while that is a tax on our local restaurants and bars, it is passed through to the end user, who also tend to be both in both residents and non-residents.
Yep. And then you'll notice the last line of the other income section is reflects the CARES Act funding. We have received and deposited those grant funds.
Hey, Lori, before you scroll down, if you can go back up.
Sure.
So in the other income, we have about $350,000 that were scheduled for transfers or contributions that did not get realized in this budget. When I look at the total other income line, we're under at about 87 or 86,000. We got the CARES Act funding, which was 360. Is there a reason why we don't also have those transfers in? Because with the transfers, if we brought those over and did what we had budgeted to do with that, we'd be way over budget on revenue for other income. On this income line, right?
At least under the circumstances, in my opinion, we should leave those funds in the capital funds since we don't need them. When you get to the bottom line, we do show a small loss, but I believe that should be absorbed by reserves rather than depleting the capital funds. Thank you.
And as we mentioned earlier, Trustee Kelly, you'll see next week the entire capital fund 1, 2, and 3 years, and then a big bucket of 35 million total. We have roughly $35 million in needs of capital funding today. And we're going to address just a small piece of those in our 3-year capital plan. And then sometime during this calendar year, I'll probably be at least starting to talk about a rather large bond issue to fund some of those other capital improvements. But yeah, we've really disinvested in our capital equipment. And this is a year we need to get back to it. And in order to do that, we've left those funds in the capital funds where we can fund those projects rather than, as you and I both talked last year, I think you recall, Trustee Kelly, I kind of pushed the envelope a little bit to transfer capital funds into balance the general fund. And I called that my private sector thinking, which at the time seemed like a good idea. But now having seen where the village is in capital spending, I think we really need it there.
Yeah, I'm just surprised. I know we talked about the impacts of COVID to revenue, but if we take that stuff out and the CARES Act funding out, so from both sides of the ledger, right? I think that we look at right around a $250,000 deficit, which seems like a lot less impact than I was expecting to see, which is good, right? I'm really glad that it didn't impact us or hit us as hard. And that's even with the places for eating tax being almost 100,000 of that we didn't collect. So really, it looks like the impact of COVID, of what we were unsure of what was going to be, looks to be about a $120,000 hit. Is that fair, Lori, to make that assumption?
So something that you do need to keep in mind is when you look at the bottom line, our budget last year did include a 14th police officer, as well as an additional headcount in the street department, both again requested for fiscal year 22. And both not hired. So.
Yeah, I'm not looking at the expense side of it, just the revenue of income we received or are budgeted to receive, taking all things considered, probably about 110,000 less as a direct effect of lower revenues than what we expected when you take out the places for eating and not transferring and the CARES Act funding.
Right.
Okay.
Any additional questions on the revenue side? Okay, go on to the next page.
The May 1st, would that be the start date for the extra 1%? You realize the 225 number?
Yes. Yeah. So if we get approval of that, we will be bringing that to the board for ratification, if you will, before. I would actually like to do that as soon as the second week in March, or second meeting in March, or the first week in April, so that we can get the word out to everybody that will need to be implemented. All right. On the expense side, with respect to personnel, we'll go through the administrative budget first, and then through the other two departments, as well as all the committees. So on the administration side, we have Josh moving to full-time, but his salary has been adjusted for a 2-month leave of absence. And then we will have Terry, our accounting manager, on full-time for a full year this year, whereas that was only partially included in last year's, in the fiscal 21 budget. I haven't gone through expenses, have I? Sorry. So I guess we kind of did revenue together. How do you want to handle this? Do you want to go through? In other words, should we be reviewing the 21 expenses first?
You mean revenue?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should go through the 21
Yeah.
projected budget.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. All right. So our expenses for personnel are expected to be higher than budgeted. That was because of bringing Terry on full-time. We had budgeted an accounting maybe super assistant, and we ended up with an accounting manager. So we are spending a little bit more and getting way more than expected. And we also brought Josh on, not realizing, I guess, that he would be moving really to full-time hours sooner than we thought. So those are the two reasons for our salaries being over. Any questions about wages and benefits?
What are the proposed raises for the rest of the staff?
So overall, the admin salaries are up about,
We're back to 22 again.
yeah, 4.18% in the overall in the general fund. So do you want to go by department or?
No, that's fine.
Yeah. So I think in the admin section, it's an average increase of 4.65%. So that's ending salary over executive salary for 22.
Primarily, the police department, those are all steps in the contract, and then the officers, our steps are prorated above that. So those are all automatic steps in the police department. We also have, we have certain people who have become certified in the water and sewer department, and then streets employees new employees who are moving pretty quickly to make them competitive so we don't lose them. One thing we've learned this year is that, well, not learned firsthand, the good news is we haven't learned it firsthand, is a lot of communities around us do pay significantly more for water and streets employees than we do. We've had very little turnover there. So we're fortunate there, but we also realize that we could lose some of these people that we've invested a lot of money in. So we did make some upgrades last year, but we're also moving through the steps as well. And I do want to share candidly with all of you that I put in a 5% increase for all 4 of our department heads. I think they've all done a yeoman's job this year, and I think they've earned that. So that's roughly the average, but so the total increase was how much, Lori?
1.4%.
Yeah, so 1.4% was the cost of living increase, but almost every employee is going through some sort of step upgrade. So the average is just under 5%.
The full-time salaries and wages and benefits, full-time, part-time, that excludes water and sewer as well as police salaries, correct? That is that's for, does this include streets as well, or is this department heads and main office administrative?
This is just Village Hall personnel, what we're looking at right now.
Okay, all right, thank you.
We'll get to police on the next page.
All right. Then in fiscal year 21, we did do several improvements to the building here at Village Hall. Most of our other expenses are in line with expectations. Building department's inspection services are up, but we did have several large building permits that were paid for and inspection services completed in fiscal year 21. We also, in other professional services, we have, so that includes everything from cleaning Village Hall every night of the week or every weeknight, as well as professional fees for Freddie Beth and her, assistance with the CBG.
CDBG.
Thank you. With those grant funds. So that has gone up a lot. In addition, we include our expenses for email and office products in that particular category.
Am I reading that correctly? Was it budgeted at 32,350 and projected to spend 157,095? Just curious how we were off by so much on that. What was the the main driver?
I did not include some of the expenses that have been included in this category. Offhand, I'm trying to think of what has zoomed that up. I know
COVID cleaning.
well, the cleaning has, but that's like $175 a week, so it's not that much here. Yeah, I'll look into that to see exactly what all is in that category.
Okay, it's significant. I mean, it's almost what, 3 times the budget?
Yeah.
5 times.
Yeah.
It's unusual.
Yeah, I agree. I think too, Lori, if you're saying there are expenses being included in this that weren't included in the original budget, are there other areas of the budget where we would then see a corresponding lack of spending because they were included in other areas?
So we're going to kind of measure the general fund against the general fund, right? But no, you will not see anything in the administrative area that is significantly lower than expected because
So
of that.
this is truly a $125,000 spending increase that was unbudgeted.
How much was Freddie Beth?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Well, we knew about Freddie Beth going into the planning last year, didn't we? That wasn't a surprise spend.
Well, it wasn't necessarily a surprise spend, but she charges on an hourly rate, and so I really had underestimated her particular expenses. Not that she's at $100,000 or anything like that.
Right, I was going to ask if that was it really that high?
I think Freddie's highest bill maybe was $1,200 one month, was probably the most. I think we need to look into that one. We might even have a misclassification here, but sorry, we're unprepared to give you a good answer there. No,
and that's okay, because I think the second question, which when we get to 22, is how then are we confident that we're going to reduce this year's spending back to 32,150?
Well, when you see the bottom line on the general fund, I think you'll get a better feel of that, especially when you get in the police department. But in admin, we need to clean this up and get a better understanding of this line item.
Sounds good.
Any additional questions in the contractual area?
Beautification, are we funding any other projects this fiscal year?
We have $22,000 left, I believe, in the fund right now, or in the budget, and we do expect to have one application, potentially 2, and we're hoping
For this fiscal year still?
Well, they could come in that time frame, but given the spring, the work will probably be done in the spring, and that would be for we expect applications from both Palazzolo's and the dollar store. And so it'll be a matter of timing. And if we are hopefully able to fund the program for next year, then one would fall into the next year. And Ryan may have a better handle on that. We're hoping that maybe the Rose Garden will come around next year. And there's one other application out there, isn't there, Brian?
Yeah, there's 2 more we expect next year. Blocks has said that they intend on making a submission, as well as the owner of the Farmers Insurance building have both expressed interest in the program.
So is the new owner of the old doctor building, the ugly blue building.
Ugly blue building, where's that?
Right across from Copper Barrel.
Oh, okay.
Dr. Hussein's old office. She lived next door.
Okay.
Do you remember how much we have in that this year?
75,000.
Yeah, we put, so 2 years ago, it was $100,000. We cut it back to 75 last year to balance the budget. And we have it in this budget at 75 again. That, hopefully that will be enough for all those. I can conceive how blocks could be pretty substantial depending on what they're gonna do.
Right.
But the program has really done more for downtown than anything we've done. And streetscape, of course, coming along will be just a real plus too. So I really hope we can keep that funding in. And that it may not be everything that's applied for next year. We could have even a little bit higher demand than the 75.
Yeah, I certainly hope so too.
Okay, we're going to go down to the, commodity section. Let's see, we did overspend on office supplies, this year. That was, the result of several different things, such as, the addition of the conferencing system, and some, desk replacements and those types of things that we have done this year to date. Any questions with respect to that? In the other expense area, I actually expect the sales tax of incentive agreements to come closer to budget. We don't have the actual results of that. We have 2 active sales tax agreements ongoing. The one with Siegel's, and then the second one involves Metrics Realty, Truck Country, and Loves. And as soon as we have the results for the Loves, we will be recording an accounts payable. I don't believe, the last time I contacted them, we should have made a payment to them. And they, not that they were passing on it, they just said save it because they hadn't closed on their whole deal, if you will. So they weren't ready to accept the payment. They have to have a third party designated to hold the money for them to split amongst the parties. So I possibly might have an update on that as soon as next Monday. And then with respect to capital outlay, the only thing that we've incurred this year just was the normal maintenance, if you will, on the storm signals on the emergency sirens. Any questions with respect to the admin fund?
Field and Trail, what did you buy? Brian, what did you buy?
That was the,
I bought a trail.
when the budget was completed, that was my fault. You will recall we got, we settled with Commonwealth Edison for the Tuscany Woods Trail. And we actually
Yes.
reduced expenditures after the start of the fiscal year. So it was a timing thing. All right, moving on to the police department. You'll see that salaries are up in this area, just due to, as Jay described, the steps and the contract increase of 3% for our patrol officers. There are no additional headcounts included in this, so we will come in under the budgeted expenditures, but pretty close, I guess you could say, considering everything. Any questions with respect to fiscal year 21 wages and benefits?
I just want to point out that the pension fund.
Yes, the pension fund transfer has taken place. The expenses of $300,000 have been transferred to the pension fund. For contractual services, they have incurred, whoops, I'm sorry, a little bit too quickly there. They have incurred some additional maintenance to their aging fleet, if you will. So we expect their expenses to be just over budget. As far as rentals, my estimate was kind of low. That includes both it only includes three things. It's the building rent on the building that their office is in, as well as rentals for their water cooler and their postage machine. 911 services is spot on. They had a few more travel expenses than expected, and they did have a lot of mandated training. So training is expected to be probably either at or a little bit over budget.
How long is their current lease on that building?
2 more years in the current lease, and then we have a 5-year option at the end of that 2 years. We're going to be talking about that quite a bit next week during the capital budget. We'll talk about this building and its future. We'll talk about the public works building, and we'll talk about the police department. But there's 2 more years left in their initial 10-year budget, and we have a 5-year option after that.
What's the increase on the 5-year option?
I can share with you a spreadsheet that we put together. Off the top of my head.
It's $100 a month in increase, plus we have to absorb the 1/4 of the change in property taxes.
I've never seen a lease that increases by $100 a month instead of a percentage year over year, but that's the way this lease reads. Yeah. Yeah.
So $1,200 a year plus.
But as the rent gets higher, that still goes up $100 every month. So the percentage increase every year is less year over year. I do have a spreadsheet. If you don't mind, we can share it with you next week. I have a spreadsheet showing the payments from now through the next 7 years.
I want to read the lease.
I have that too for you. In fact, we'll send you that in ahead of time, but I can tell you that our lease payments over the next 7 years are around $245,000. Because I'm looking at that versus the cost of building a new building.
All right.
The big change in their other professional services is they're cleaning the police department 6 nights a week. So that's a $480 expense per week. We've been doing this whole fiscal year. Page. Dues, I believe, is a matter of timing, so that's slightly over budget. Office supplies and other commodity expenses are expected to be either at or under budget. So fuel prices were good this year, although they're on the zooming up side. Any questions with respect to commodities? So with respect to installment payments, all of the current squads are paid for in full. So that is expected to stay at that 26.8 level. With respect to capital outlay, because of being on the austerity program, we did not expend nearly as much as anticipated, and we did not get a new squad car this year.
No new car.
Well, I drive.
We got a new, like the chief got a new car, and we got a new Explorer right at the end of last year. So we did not get a new car this year. Any questions about the police department?
I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that Chief Thompson is very disappointed that he is not getting an additional police officer. He also requested 3 new vehicles, and we only put 2 in the budget. But as I mentioned earlier, the cost of a new police officer, honestly, sitting here today, I don't see how we can ever add another full-time police officer at the cost that would cost us, roughly close to $200,000 annually for a $75,000 to $80,000 salary.
Ever?
In the near future,
Ever?
Until we, let me add this caveat, until we find another source of revenue to support the pension fund. The cost of the police officer just went up $50,000 a year last January because of the pensions alone. So every new police officer, depending on, who we hire, if he's a lateral, if he's a rookie, or, it's less expensive to salary wise and pension wise for a rookie. But then we have to put them through the academy. We have to train them. They're not productive for the first few months. So it's pretty tough. That's why so many communities have part-time police officers now.
We don't hire part-time police officers?
We have not, to my knowledge, ever, certainly not recently.
No, we would have to ask permission, because the police.
Yeah, the contract. I
contract.
think Pingree Grove is all part-time, all right?
They have I believe two full-time police officers there, and that's it. Everybody else.
There are quite a few out there, and there's some police officers that work in more than one community to make a
Yeah, that's
full-time
what I'm
job.
thinking.
But the pension benefits aren't there, and then the other benefits tend to be less, but it gives them more flexibility. So it's, Brian's not very happy with me right now, but it's just a number that we couldn't fit. So, but I do want you to know that that was a request, and this is the second, we did approve it last year, then we froze it, and then this time around, we could not fit it in. I felt like the position in the water department, which is the only new position we're budgeting this year, was more important. While he's already here, we're just adding a little bit to his salary. And he's also going to be on a leave of absence for 2 months, Josh will be, so the overall costs aren't that much higher. And I think that was well, I won't digress, but that was a pretty big consensus of the board, I think, to bring Josh on full time. But I do want to mention that, I know this is off topic, but since we're talking about headcount, the additional water department employee will also be a snow plower, so that'll be shared by the street department. So that will give Dave the 9th driver that he wants. He won't get the summer or the full-time person for the rest of the season, but he will have 9 drivers for the first time in this budget. Which means he won't have to drive a route. He'll just be doing cleanup and supervising. So sorry to get off topic, but back to police.
As far as street department salaries, we will end under budget. There was an additional headcount in the budget for fiscal year 21. So that individual was not hired. Any questions with respect to fiscal year 21 street salaries? Sorry. Under contractual services, things are going along as budgeted or less. Street maintenance, that is a formula in that cell. We will likely not experience quite that many street maintenance repairs. But at the time when this was started after 8 months in December, it looked like, I would just use the formula method for that particular one. Any questions on contractual services on this particular page?
Has the snow 4,200 contractual service snow, if they just not billed us, is that why it's current 0 but still budgeted at 25K?
Yeah, that's accurate. Actually, I expected to come in much lower than that. We really haven't had Trees Unlimited come in very frequently to do the downtown cleanup. We had our, Toby's not here, but that end loader was down for a while. And so we had a rental unit and they were able to save a ton of money by moving snow around using that piece of equipment where we didn't have to bring Trees Unlimited in. So it was kind of a rental swap and use that thing as much as we could during the rental period, and then save money on the contractual side.
Okay, thanks.
Continuing on the contractual side on the next page, we have pretty much under budgeted in each category. So again, just trying to hold costs down and not use as many outside services when at all possible. Any additional questions on contractual services for 21? All right, in the commodity section, things are pretty much right on target. It does look like our fuel expenses might be over. That was again a formula, and with the increase in gas prices and having had so many trips out this winter for various weather events, that actually might be over budget a little bit.
I will add that we increased our, not just our fuel, but also our natural gas costs. I'm quite concerned about the future cost of gasoline and natural gas going forward. So we beat that up about a 15% increase in the next year's budget, and I see that potentially going a lot higher.
The debt service here is related to bonded debt. That debt service is right on, almost perfect with our expectations. As far as installment payments, they are not as great as budgeted. You will notice that at the time of preparing this, our 8 months in, we had $169,000 in vehicle expenses, and we expect that to be around 35. We are still waiting for the title for the latest snowplow that was purchased, and without the title, we cannot finance that. So at the present time, it's not financed. Jay's convinced me that it's coming, so we're going to try to finance that snowplow. And
turns out that Truck Country is not very good at titles. The last one we purchased came out of their Wisconsin office, right?
the prior two came from Wisconsin, and that worked out really well.
I may have jinxed it because I went up there to take a tour of the facility and sign the documents, and I think my signature wasn't even good, was it? We had to have Jeff maybe sign it later.
No, that all worked. They had an extra rolling stock form. They thought we were kind of over the road truckers, I think, so.
Yeah, so for some reason, whatever their paperwork is, or else the DMV is not up to speed. Somewhere there's a missing here, but as I assured Lori, we will eventually get a title. I'm positive of that. Right now, it should be with the DMV though, right? We've done everything they've asked.
Yes, and they confirmed that they have it. It's just a matter of getting it processed, so. Any questions with respect to the street fund or the street department? All right, we're gonna zip through the committees then. At the for fiscal year 21, I'm sorry, I'm struggling to hand down here for some reason. Whoa. Sorry. Planning is shown as, you'll notice the title has been changed, Planning and Zoning Commission. That's in anticipation of the potential merger of that, those two bodies for fiscal year 22. In 21, we have, they haven't met quite as often as my expectations, which is good, I guess. So both planning and zoning are under our budgeted expenses. The police commission, they are paid an annual salary, so we expect that they will meet their budget. And if you're wondering why police salaries are $775 now and $902 at the end, this is kind of a timing thing. But we will expend all $969 for wages for the police commission this year. The commission has been fully staffed the entire year. Any questions with respect to their expenses? Okay, so whoops, gosh darn it. That brings us to the bottom line here in the general fund, we will, without transfers, we expect expenses in excess of revenue of $12,545.
Now, Lori, that's not including the 150,000 for the title that hasn't been realized yet, correct?
That is correct.
Once we get that title, that number could go up to what, 160, 170?
So this actually projects, this actually projects financing that vehicle. So it will, this does have the financing piece in there. That's my expectation. If we are unable to finance the vehicle, then that would increase by $160,000+. So in other words, increase to the negative.
That's what Lori meant when she said Jay convinced her that we will finance, that we'll get a title, because, I mean, the budget doesn't work without that. It's $160,000 swing. I mean, it's, to me, it's not something I would go down and have a sit-in at the DMV before we have to.
Oh, okay, so I understand. If we don't get the title, we have to pay it like as if it's cash. If we get the title, that's actually what we're showing here.
Yes, that's accurate.
Okay, all right.
So, if necessary, we either can use reserve funds or we could, transfer from one of our capital funds to make that whole.
Jay, is there a legal obligation for Truck Country and timing of getting a clean title transferred?
You know, at this point, unfortunately, Lori had to spend quite a bit of time getting it right, getting the paperwork right. But at this point, Truck Country's done everything they can, and it's just with the DMV.
Gotcha. Okay, it's not at Truck Company. Okay.
I mean, the only thing we could bill them back for would be Lori, probably 10 hours she spent on the phone with the DMV and other people that we've had to mess with. But frankly, the DMV is not that great to deal with either. So,
No, they're not.
I mean, sometimes they can be pretty good over the phone, but right now they're not.
Look at that deal.
So the thing that, I'll just make it really quick. The thing that they didn't do is, I think we probably were their very first local purchase that wasn't an over-the-road trucker. So that being said, they don't do license plates there. So normally when we get our vehicles, we either get them at James Motors and they give us the title and the license plates, or we get, like from Truck Country last year, we get a certificate of origin, and we take that and are able to purchase at the DMV our license plates and title. So they gave me the certificate of origin and they're like, oh, no, Illinois dealer, they have to do the title for you. So they sent me back, the DMV sent me back to Truck Country to get them to submit the title application. But then once I had that paperwork and could substantiate that was on file or at least pending with the state, then we could get our license plate. So it's just not a good timing thing when the dealership doesn't do both activities. So maybe we'll purchase that Oak Creek again.
Okay, understood.
All right, so we're gonna go back up to the top of the spreadsheet and start down fiscal year 22, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Oops. Sorry. So just to go through these really quickly, property taxes, we talked about the extension, and so as I've done in prior budgets, I have taken my expected extension and multiplied by 98% to get the $1.1 million that's reflected here. We got our levy confirmations back, so those just need to be signed and sent to the county clerk's office so that the extension can be completed before the end of the fiscal year. We'll have the actual extensions, probably sometime in mid to late. With respect to intergovernmental revenue, I have estimated the sales tax. I did discount from this current year's budget yet put in an increase for sales tax that we're expected to realize this year to date. That's kind of a shot in the dark. You know, things are coming back slowly, but some of our big retailers their sales are down, and so that's why I didn't quite match my expectations for fiscal year 21. State income tax, I use the Illinois Municipal League's per capita estimate. I'm sure you all have heard that the Census Bureau has determined that they are delaying the census numbers coming to the state until the end of September. That delay, I believe, will cost us several months where we will not see the population increase. The census will not be certified, so we'll see our increase in this particular area. So right now I've used the ESRI population estimate for Hampshire and said that we'll get 5 months worth of
We can't
increase.
see it on the screen. Can you scoot it over a little bit?
What number are you using for our estimated population?
I used a number just over 7,100. Yeah, I think it'll be closer to 8,000 myself. I don't know, that sounds maybe aggressive, but we'll see.
We could start the pool right here, right now.
I don't know, have you seen the roads off of Allen Road?
Hickory Road just put up a sign at 10,004.
Oh, did they?
How did they put it up without the census numbers?
I don't know. So it's 47, 10,400 people.
Oh,
Unless they did a special census, there's no sense about that.
Oh, they did. They did it 2 years ago, they did a special census.
And they just now got the sign up.
I didn't say they were faster.
I mean, this is a big deal to us that we're being delayed almost 5 months in that increase. And what's the percentage increase in population? 30%?
from 5563 to.
Yeah, it's almost roughly 30% increase. No explanation. The report will be given to the president on March 31st as scheduled. But after that, there's no explanation for why there's a delay coming back to the states. The only thing I can imagine is that maybe the former administration was treating immigrants in one direction in the census, and maybe the new administration wants to treat them separately. But it's a mystery to us, frankly, and it's costing us a lot of money the first year.
Use tax is the same thing. That is a per capita amount, and we utilize the IML's estimates. Again, using the same population estimates. Last year, we did not budget for cannabis use tax because it was just roughly over $1,000 the prior year. But we are budgeting for that this year using the IML's per capita estimate. Personal placement, personal property replacement tax.
Property replacement.
Is a Hampshire estimate. They do, IML does tell us whether it's going up or down, and it is supposed to go up a little bit. So I have estimated that at just around $20,000. The next estimates are our tax that you'll see on your phone bill and ComEd and NICOR bills. Overall, telecom tax is going down. Less people are having landlines, which is a generator of those taxes. So I'm expecting that to go down quite a bit compared to last year's budget and even this year's realized amount. And then utility tax, just because of additional rooftops and business, we have that going up a little bit. Any questions with respect to that?
Or do you want to just mention we mentioned in our email the risk of the LDGF fund?
Oh, yes. So
Yeah.
in Governor Pritzker's budget address, he did ask that LGDF be reduced by 10%. However, he is also closing some corporate and other tax loopholes. So neither one of those are taken into consideration, with my hopes that they will kind of be offsetting perhaps. I really have absolutely no idea, but the Illinois Municipal League is fighting hard for municipalities to try to get that off the table because that's that's a huge hit, especially in, these times with the pandemic and everybody's revenue being down.
So local government distributed fund is a collection of all these state taxes that, not all of them, but the ones you see before you. I mean, Lori, which ones are in the LDGF?
The state income tax is the number that we're looking at.
It's a big number.
Yeah, 10% of that would be.
Yeah, 10% of that's a big number.
And this is, I mean, that's that fund is oftentimes pointed to as a way for the state to save money, but the IML does a really good job of defending us for that. So we'll see what happens.
Okay.
All right, down in the reimbursable revenue, the big change here is the fact that we're expecting to have 2 school resource officers staffing one at the high school and one at the middle school. The school district reimburses us for 2/3 of their salary and benefit costs. So that will include the pension costs. Last year, we had one officer that was out for several months due to a work-related injury. And so therefore, the school district did not reimburse us nearly as much as we expected.
That's the other.
Yep, that's reimbursement other, yep. And then, we also have, switched out one of our school resource officers, so, he's a younger officer at a lower pay rate, so that's why it's down as well. Any questions with respect to that?
Is it the end of revenue?
Nope, not quite. So, in our other, revenue, other income categories, we expect interest to be down quite a bit. Interest rates are really poor. Video gaming, I think I was conservative. It's a little bit less than last year's or this current year's budget, but quite a bit more than we expect to get in video gaming this fiscal year. Hoping that it comes back with a great surge, and therefore it will not. If it's better, it's going to be better for us. So workers' comp recovery we don't have anything budgeted for that this fiscal year. We did receive money back from the officer that was out. So we actually record that in revenue. Police officers are required to be paid 100% of their salary when they are on a work-related injury disability. So we continue to pay 100% and then get reimbursed by workers' comp. 2/3 like it would be for anybody else. Franchise fee and rent includes our the tower rental, the ground leasing that we have for the various cell towers, and then also our franchise fees for from Comcast and the various internet providers. I propose that we transfer the down payment that's going to be required on the street sweeper, which you'll see in the street budget that's coming up. And then, as we mentioned before, I do have the places for eating tax in there at 2%, which if the board agrees, we will bring that to them for ratification very soon. Liquor licenses are standing.
Real quick, Lori, sorry. Jay, is the recommendation then for us to purchase a street sweeper and not outsource that work to potentially Waste Management or a vendor? I know we were talking about the 2 options.
Yes, I got a quote from Vaughn, and the cost they would do, I think it was once a week service just during certain months of the season, certain months of the year. And it just, the costs were just too high for us to do it on a long-term basis. We could do it for a year or 2 if we were really hurting and couldn't afford the new street sweeper. But this is Dave's #1 priority for capital funding, and it makes sense to buy it rather than use that service.
Okay,
we also use it for cleaning sewers, what's the
Catch base.
catch basins. So it'll be used pretty much 8 months full time.
Okay, sounds good, thanks.
Any additional questions in that area? We'll move to fines, fees, and permits. The liquor licenses and other licenses and fees are expected to be comparable to this current fiscal year. With respect to building permits, this is an estimate, if you will, based on 55 new residential homes, about 300 miscellaneous residential permits, and then 3 commercial permits plus 5 miscellaneous small commercial permits, which is about standard for what we normally see in a given year. You'll notice that there's quite a disparity between building permits and building permit admin fees. And that's just because of the way we are doing the recording of these revenues with SafeBill. So it's not it's just not possible for us to record them in the same categories that we did in prior years. Zoning fees is an estimate. Transition fees are related to public use transition fees, which are received from residential permits. We've experienced less fines, fees, and reports due to the courts being shut down, but they now are actively doing all of their stuff either by video conference or in person, and so we expect that to rebound. I'm not sure if it'll be at the same level that our expectations were for this budget, so we've reduced that a bit. Impound fees, for a long time, we really haven't
impound a lot of cars next
year. Yeah, we're hoping that picks back up.
Get all those Lakeview people when the snow comes next year.
We just didn't tow a lot of cars, nobody was out drinking, obviously, and then, so, we do expect that to pick up though, this year. And then, alarm registration and fees, that is, collective, both for registration fees as well as, fines for having too many alarms, false alarms.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're not really sure what's gonna happen with respect to that, although, I have that going down a little bit.
It was the biggest violator.
The school district.
Oh,
Hands
nice.
down.
Do the building permits include the potential of the Oakstead development in the budget?
So, I estimated 55, new homes being built next year.
In total?
In total, yes.
Lori, can I answer that?
Yeah.
The answer is no, Trustee Kelly. We do not expect any homes to break ground, any permits to be pulled this calendar year in Oakstead.
Even for the school or any of that type of?
So the school will not have they'll go through the zoning process and probably a plan review, but we will not be doing any inspections because they have the Illinois State School Board of Education does those. They're not really even required to get a permit from the village.
That's why we're charging you for alarm violations.
But since somebody did ask about Oakstead, I can give you all a quick update. Is that the end of revenue, by the way?
Yeah.
So I want to give you 2 quick updates. Since you asked about Oakstead, as of this afternoon, we now have a tentative agreement on the development agreement, which I'll be sharing with all of you on Thursday. It has to be redrafted. The fee structure stayed the same as what I shared with you yesterday afternoon. So I'm very pleased with the fact that the village will receive almost $156,000 more in fees than would have been received in the first agreement. I won't go into a lot of detail, but I think they've done a really good job of settling with the Park District. As I also shared with you yesterday, So we will be able to share with you the development agreement by Thursday, as promised, 2 weeks before the village board public hearing. And we've also scheduled quite a few presentations for the zoning board meeting next Tuesday. And I think we'll begin to really respond to a lot of the questions that came up at the Plan Commission hearing. I do want to go back and any further questions about Oakstead, Trustee Kelly or anybody else? I was hoping for a little opening to give you an update there. But I also want to mention under the revenue side that, and I want to thank Representative Underwood's office. She's been very helpful, and her staff has in keeping us abreast of the changes as the American Rescue Plan goes through Congress. As you probably know, it did pass the House, and now it goes back to the Senate to go through the reconciliation process. She has sent us 2 updates. Both come from the House Committee on Oversight and Reform. The first estimate said that, and this is directly from the federal government to the village of Hampshire. We're not going through the state. We're not going through Kane County this time. These are direct funds. And the original estimate was that the village of Hampshire, by name, coming directly from the House Oversight and Reform, was 1.2 to 1.4 million. This week, we received an estimate, actually on the 26th, last week on the 26th of February, we received an estimate of 750,000. So that number is almost cut in half. And I did talk to Representative Underwood's office this week, and they're trying to get further clarification. Those are numbers she's just passing along from the House Committee on Oversight and Reform. So the number will be, we believe, somewhere between 750 and 1.2 million.
They sent an email out late this afternoon that 750 number is
Down again?
No, accurate.
Oh, accurate.
accurate.
Was that from Representative Underwood or a different office? I don't think I've seen that one.
Was not from her directly. It was
From our staff?
Michelle Themos.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Themos.
Yeah.
That
Oh, yeah, I do have that. I haven't seen that yet.
came in at 442. So the number will be should be 772,297.
Where do you see that? It just says J. We received confirmation from the committee. New estimate is just, the new one is more accurate. So you're going back to that spreadsheet, right? Okay. And with that, I'm going to stop talking because my battery's dead on my laptop.
That's the trick.
But I mean, I think by all accounts that bill is going to pass by probably the end of this month. So I think that's probably real money, and then we'll be back to
8
talk.
minutes, go.
Oh,
We get our little slice of 1.9 trillion.
Hey,
Nice.
we'll take it.
Yep.
Okay, Lori's gonna go through the expenses in 8 minutes.
You turn into a pumpkin?
Yeah.
all right.
Oh, you should have started it earlier.
I told you.
So, as we mentioned, we're looking at bringing Josh on, officially full-time with the leave of absence in there. And then we have Terry in for the full year. Our wages and benefits are, expected to come in at, 583,000 and change.
Are we gonna get a breakdown of each individual person? I mean, typically each year,
We can provide you that.
so we know what everybody proposed salary is.
We surely can.
Okay.
So Josh and Terry are gonna also get full benefits and everything?
Terry is a full-time employee right now and is, already on the health insurance and receives benefits.
Okay.
When did she start full time? When did we
She
start?
started July 31st was her first day.
July 31st.
Okay.
Right. Here are our contractual services. What can I tell you? We're looking at working on the front and side of the village hall here. Possibly changing out the windows and doing some shoring up of the south side of the building. And then, everything else in this category, is, fairly standard. We did, put in some additional legal services for labor, in our current budget. That's all included up above. So, we have that, in there. Building services, inspection services is, a calculated amount. We are on pretty much a set fee schedule with Safe Build in that 20% of the permit fees are coming to the village. So the expense is the 80% of the revenue expected. Any questions with respect to contractual services? All right. I don't have anything for utilities at this time. We do have the clock and the sign in the budget. And it's unclear at this time whether or not we will be able to use our franchise electric allowance for those purposes, but I think as long as we don't sell advertising on the sign, in other words, make it a money generating thing, and the clock clearly is not money generating, we may be able to put those expenses right on that tab, if you will. The big change in office supplies compared to this past year is we will not be having census supplies put in there. We did some printing for insertion in the water bills, and then I believe we had some of the banners and stuff were included in that expense line item. Yep. The computer software and licensing is related to the cost of our ERP solution, so that we have going up just an inflationary amount. We kind of talked about sales tax agreements, so this is an estimate that will be due to Siegel's in I'll call them the metrics group, if you will, or the Loves group, for fiscal year 22. So just a little bit over last year's budget, or projected budget. And then with respect to capital outlay, we do have an increase in the storm signal category. We were told a few years ago that there was one of the boxes that holds the batteries that needed to be replaced, and for some reason, like, it hasn't deteriorated in the same way, but we continue to put that in the budget in expectation that that is going to require replacement. Any questions about capital outlay or the overall administrative budget? Okay.
No.
Moving on to the police department. So salaries reflect 7.3% increase. That we do have only 13 officers in there, and that reflects the contractual amounts, 3% overall for the police contract, and then the other individuals included in that area. I did knock back the field training officer. I kept that in there. We don't expect to actually hire a new officer, but if we do have the need for replacing somebody due to attrition or some reason, I did leave some money in the budget for that purpose. Everything else stays about the same. Overtime increases simply because of the increase in salaries. Obviously, the big number that sticks out is the police pension contribution. That's something, this is not a one-time, one and done situation. Our expectation is this number will be this much and a little bit more each year from this point forward. Any questions with respect to benefits or wages in this police department category?
Lori, I know you've talked about it ad nauseum, so I hate to ask the question again, but on the pension contribution, how long until do you estimate, or how many more years do you estimate it will take us to be at the funding level the state requires to where we see this type of spend in that category?
So we must be 90% funded by 2040. And so we're not only funding our normal costs, but we're also funding the prior amounts that have accumulated in our liability. So I really don't, it's not like even in 2040, it's not gonna go down. It's gonna continue to, yeah.
The only thing that reduces our costs is if a pensioner dies and his wife also dies.
No, I understand that, but a $347,000 increase is because we're trying to catch up, right? We're trying to get 90% funded. So my question is, once we hit that one, when do we expect to hit that 90% funding based on our current trajectory? And once we do, these catch-up payments then go away. This isn't sustaining, to your point, this is sustaining plus catch-up to fund up to 90%. So when do we estimate to hit that 90%? Because then that theoretically should come off that catch-up payment.
It's our expectation to meet that funding level as statutorily required in 2040.
Unless the legislature, as the IML is requested, gives us another 10 years, and that would give us some relief immediately. Some relief.
But the 647,752 is to cover current liabilities plus the trajectory to get us at 2040 to be 90% funded.
That's it.
Okay.
Any additional questions there? All right. Down in contractual services, the chief has made some notes off to the side. There are no change in some of these categories. Communication services includes the actual expenses of phones plus any officer reimbursement or requests for stipends for use of their personal phones. The 911 services is a direct charge. We know exactly what that's going to be. We pay Kane County Dispatch for that. Legal services is always traditionally budgeted at $12,000. Sorry, down in this area, we've not spent that much this year to date. We're not sure. It probably will go up as we expect more court cases to be heard. So that includes Mr. Schuster's billings. And other professional services is related to the increase is related, at least in part, to the increase in cleaning at the facility. They do hope to knock that back possibly to 3 times per week. But that is, that relates to the increase over the prior year budget. Any questions before I turn the page? All right, the only thing that was left was dues. So that's the end of contractual services. Office supplies, we're budgeting the same dollar amount. There is additional expense in for gasoline in this category. And then the other big line item in this particular area is uniforms, which is a contractual allowance. So that would be fully expending the allowance for each officer in that category. Any questions? Jay, I believe you said that we had two vehicles in the budget. We actually do have all 3 vehicles. Yep, the other one is in here. So, that would be, wait a second. Yep. 20% down is in the vehicle category, and then the installment payments are up in the installment category. We would be financing these vehicles for 3 years. And then the other large expense that you'll see down in the capital outlay is $62,000 in tow fund purchases. And those are Starcom radios. The county, with their CARES Act funding, purchased new technology in getting Motorola radios. And so the village is on a different frequency, I guess you could say. We could talk to dispatch, but we would not be able to hear back. The county is donating 4 radios to us, and we're going to purchase 10 additional ones, costing $62,000.
And that's something that Brian's not too thrilled about, but once the county upgraded, I'm pretty sure they used their CARES Act funding for that. There are millions and millions of CARES Act funding. So we really don't have any choice.
Any questions with respect to that?
Nope.
All right, we will go on to the street department. The street department wages and benefits, oh, it has a big fat 0 there, you'll notice. And that's because, as Jay mentioned, we're going to transfer about $500,000 from MFT funds to cover those salaries. The wages are actually down compared to this year's budget because we did not fill the open street department. Well, it wasn't open, but we had expected to add a new headcount and did not do that this year. Any questions about that? All right,
Nope.
We'll go down to contractual services. Oops. Raising my page breaks. Pretty much everything in this category is staying the same except for sidewalks. Dave would like to start a sidewalk replacement program where the village is actually paying for sidewalk replacement. This would require, I believe, an ordinance change because right now we require that the residents participate in this. We do know of several tripping hazards and residents just are unwilling to get their sidewalks replaced. So I guess, Jay, we're going to review with other communities how they're handling that.
Yeah.
So we will continue to look at that, but we do have $10,000 in sidewalk replacements in the budget for this year. Any questions before I turn the page?
Nope.
All right, on to communication services. This is similar to the expenses that we have for this fiscal year. Street lighting is actually the electricity to light the lights throughout the village. And then we expect to have about $15,000 in street light maintenance. This category comes in a little bit higher than last year at $254,640. Other professional services, that's quite a bit higher, and I'm gonna look up and find out what that is for you. I have that on a separate spreadsheet, but I do not have that information at hand. Any questions with respect to that?
Nope.
For streetlight maintenance, that's like if a light goes out or a photo cell is out and they have to replace things, correct?
That's correct. This would include the bits and pieces for if somebody hits a light pole and it has to be replaced and we're unable to, get reimbursement through insurance or something like that. Yes. Yep.
Jay, when you're looking at the capital, and I know we'll go over that at another time, when you're looking at capital budgets, is replacement of streetlights with LEDs or brighter lumens or directional lighting, is that part of the capital, that 35 million you're talking about?
No,
Okay.
it's not something I've ever really looked into.
Okay.
So the village does have a part-time electrician, and when the ballasts are going out on the current lights, he is able to retrofit those and is putting LED lights into our old fixtures.
Okay.
Mr. O'Shea?
Any idea how many of those there are?
Like that bucket truck from.
A long time. Yeah.
I
There's
asked
over
how,
400 streetlights in the village.
yeah, so we have over 400, Trustee Kelly, so it'll be a long time, unless we make a special initiative out of it, it would take a long time. And unfortunately, ComEd does not offer free LED lights for streetlights like that, like they did for my house when I had my audit done a couple of weeks ago.
All right. Then down in the commodity section, Dave did not increase his fuel expenses, so we're gonna have to take a look at that. Because we do expect the price of fuel to go up. In the other categories, they have remained the same. Any questions with respect to that? Oops, sorry.
Nope.
I don't know how I ended up at the top of the page. All right. We talked about debt service. This is related to bonded street department debt. In the equipment area, I spelled gator incorrectly, I see, but
Oh, I thought that was a gator. I'm like, what's a gator?
we're hoping to be able to share that piece of equipment with the SSAs, with potential to bill back the use of the equipment and do some of the pond herbicide applications in-house rather than expending dollars for a third-party contractor. The installment payments here includes this payments for the sweeper. It's a $228,000 piece of equipment that we will put 20% down. That amount is reported in the vehicle section, and then, as I mentioned, the installments include the sweeper as well as the installment payments that are being paid on the current trucks.
Can you rent it out,
The sweeper?
like to Pingree Grove?
So Burlington actually does borrow our sweeper, or we actually go down and sweep for them. But that's not a very big city, so it's not a highly revenue generating.
I highly doubt that Pingree Grove has a sweeper, do they?
I did mention that to Dave, and Dave told me he was gonna keep that thing busy basically every day, all season long. So that was when I tried to persuade him to lease, consider postponing a couple of years. It's his number one thing. I mean, the one and this one is such an upgrade. It has stainless steel components, so it won't rust. And it's a demo. It's available, I think it is, right?
It is a demo, yes.
So we'll save, I think the original cost was $265. So yeah, this is it's an expense, probably the most expensive piece of equipment we'll ever buy, maybe, or that we have, certainly since I've been here. But yeah, Dave actually went to Pingree Grove, met the public works director, took a tour of the facility while we were looking at how to engineer or design ours. And I talked to him about sharing this one, and he said, no, nobody gets to share my sweeper, at least for now. He says he's going to keep it busy, but we are looking for opportunities to do that sort of thing.
No sharing. Okay.
And then that concludes the street department. Are there any questions?
Nope.
All right, and then as we discussed going through the committees, I have a combo of the Planning and Zoning Commission, just an estimate of the number of meetings that they will be having next fiscal year. Oops. The next category is zoning, so that's in at 0. Police commission is in there. The one big expense that has increased quite a bit is for testing services. That would be to, every 3 years, they're required to do a new list for both patrol officers, eligibility for patrol officers as well as sergeants, and we will be needing to do both of those lists this coming year. Any questions?
Yeah, Lori, and I should have asked this in the police part. You don't have to scroll up. With the recent legislation that passed requiring additional training and certification of officers, is that, because I think a lot of that starts July 2021. Is that accommodated in this budget for training and certifications?
We really don't see a lot of additional fees until 2025 when we'll
body cam.
get the body cams. And the body cams are actually the cheap part of that equation. It's the storage of the videos that's really expensive.
Okay, all right. So it is like anything we would have to do to accommodate the current law or the new law has been accommodated for in this budget.
Yes.
But Trustee Kelly, let me just say that there's nothing in this budget that Chief Thompson believes will increase our costs in the current year. In fact, most of our department was just certified about 6 weeks ago for use of force training. So we had already, Chief Thompson had anticipated some of those needs and have done a lot of training in the current year, which is one of the reasons the overtime was up. And so that we've already accomplished some of what the new law would require. So we're not anticipating any additional costs this year.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. So that brings us to our bottom line. Revenue of $4,308,642 and expenses of $4,297,937. That does include transferring motor fuel tax for street salaries. So we end with revenue in excess of expenses of $10,705.
Okay.
Thank you.
And the largest reason why it shows almost balance when we're taking close to $500,000 out for streets is because of the almost $400,000 increase or $380,000 increase of police pension.
Right.
Yep. Okay. All right.
So the thing you might want to all think about for the next week before we present the rest of the budget, all the capital funds and the capital budget, is what we may do with 700 and some thousand of
CARES Act 2.
Yeah.
Rescue
funds. I thought I had it remembered, but I can't seem to keep that current. So that's something, remember, it'll be a one-time income. So it's not something we really want to use for operating funds if we can avoid that. One thing that I have in the back of my mind would be funding the north-south water connection. That would just about fill the gap. But there are a lot of opportunities that we'll be sharing with you next week that you can choose from.
Okay.
I did look too, when you had brought up the potential new revenues in looking at the sales tax compared to our our neighbors. You know, at first I was a little weary, but it looks like Huntley adds that 1%. Algonquin adds a 0.75. Pingree doesn't add anything right now. So it's interesting when we look at the surrounding communities of how they've approached that extra sales tax, but that would require a referendum, correct?
Yes, for non-home rule communities, it does require a referendum.
Unshare screen.
But I would say, Trustee Kelly, that the only two in this area are Elburn and Geneva that are non-home rule communities that have passed that nearby. We can send you a list of all the non-home rule communities and the home rules. But obviously, a lot of the home rule already have it. And by the way, in Cook County, non-home rule communities also do not have to have a referendum. And the IML is proposing right now legislation that would extend that beyond Cook County to the rest of the state. So it is conceivable that if the IML is successful in getting that passed, that we could do it without referendum.
Okay.
Is there any way, I've talked about this before, is there any way that we can, that anyone, I don't necessarily have to see it myself, but can see who's paying sales tax? Because I can guarantee you that we are losing a lot of revenue on these home-based businesses that don't pay sales tax. They advertise their crap on Facebook and they don't pay sales tax.
The answer to your question is no, because I had to sign my life away just so that I can, look at.
People in the village that can look at it.
Yeah, and you have to sign
I
up.
Jay myself.
Yeah, and we can't even share it with each other unless one of us looks it up. I don't know why it's such top secret in this world of transparency in government, but we're not allowed to share. I cannot tell you today what James Motors' sales tax is per year.
Okay, is there some way that I could say, hey, Jeff, can you look up and see if Jones's Creations pay sales tax? I don't care how much.
Can we say that they're paying it?
So-
or
Can
just
I
how
share
much?
that with you? If they do or they don't, I don't know.
I probably not, but what you could do is, so if we came up with a system, like, what is your ultimate goal? Do you want us to say, hey, state of Illinois, because they will go after these people?
Yes,
Then make your list and
I have a
We can
list of
follow
like
up.
15 people.
Well, Ryan, didn't Elaine share with us a couple of weeks ago that there are 143, what's the?
No, it was much higher than that. It was like 1,400.
Yeah, 1,400 in Hampshire alone, 1,400 businesses out of people's homes. How did she get that from? What was
She
the
got
website?
it from Esri, I think. Was
Esri,
it
yeah.
Esri or Chamber of Commerce or something?
I bet Esri wasn't.
Yeah, I think too, though, we just need to, so I have a business that I sell through and I pay sales tax. So I have a stake in here that I'm saying you can look me up, I pay sales tax, right?
I can't look you up.
Well, you can't look me up, but I can share those forms with you to show you. Because I have a business license, an LLC in the state of Illinois, I have to go through my tax Illinois and pay that every quarter. Now it's annual because, I don't sell much. That being said, I think we also have to take into consideration, or I don't know the law well enough to know if somebody who has a quote home-based business because they sell through Etsy and it's arts and crafts, if they're liable for a sales tax if it's pure online sales through a third-party website like Etsy, or if they're not required to do a sales tax. I don't know.
No, Etsy. So Etsy, anyone that sells on Etsy, the sales tax is paid where the item is shipped to, and Etsy pays sales tax. So anyone that sells on Etsy, we are getting our fair share. But I'm talking about people that bake cakes and deliver them down the street, and a cake is $40 and they're not charging sales tax. So then we're not getting sales tax. Like you just said, you make a bottle of sauce and you charge tax and we get our cut of your tax.
Right.
Why is it here that you pay and potentially, I'm just gonna go low and say 250 other people don't have to pay? Like that to me, A, it's not fair, and B, it's against the law, and we're losing revenue on all those people.
Yeah, but the mechanism you would have to install to recapture all that tax would far exceed whatever you're losing in taxes. That's the problem with
Responsibility.
unregulated. Yeah, I get you. I just don't know what you would do to collect it.
Us, right?
it's simply an email to them.
There's no cost to us to recapture that money. It's the state. You just give the state their name and they go after them.
So we want to,
Yeah, I don't think you recapture. I think you're just going forward.
Going
with
forward.
tax.
no, I'm just saying is whatever lost tax. I don't know. I would think you wouldn't get enough money to make it worth the effort personally, but I just don't know how much success you're going to have.
Yeah, I don't know how big of a issue it is. I know we have people that post on Facebook and do stuff, but
Yeah, I'm good.
Well, the answer to your question is if you give Lori a list of those names, she can send those emails to DOR and they will investigate. And we'll make sure they know it was you that ratted them out.
Please. I'm no longer
Yeah, I was gonna
trustee.
say, is that what we want? I don't know.
The good news is, which I did not know, as trustee Kelly just said, is if you're on Etsy, which is what Elaine did mention the other day was Etsy, then they
I
are
am
paying.
not on Etsy. I have my own site. I do all my own stuff, so I am not an Etsy seller. But what I was just saying, a company or a lot of crafters, a lot of home-based businesses will sell through an Etsy or a third-party site that does all of that stuff for them. Like even if you sell through Amazon, Amazon is the one that pays the fees, not the individual seller. So if you go to the state of Illinois and they say, hey, I sell through Amazon, the state's going to say, I'm not collecting anything from them. I'm collecting from Amazon.
Right. So anyone that sells through a third-party seller, we are getting our
Right.
cut.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're even shrinking those home-based businesses more to ones that.
So you're saying that if I look at the report,
Right.
you'll see an Amazon line item and an Etsy line item and all these other.
I don't know how Amazon operates, but you should definitely see Etsy.
Okay.
So that would be anyone that buys something on Etsy. So I could buy something on Etsy and it's made in California, but because I'm buying it here, I'm paying
Sure, it's Illinois sales tax.
Illinois sales tax. So yes, you should see a line item from Etsy.
Yeah, and I think Illinois just passed that law last year or the year before. It was recently because before that, all e-commerce sales in Illinois were not taxed.
Right, right. And then too, I think we really have to also watch the farmers markets, the vendors at Coon Creek. I mean, if we're struggling here to find money, no, it's not much, but if you total them all up, I bet you're looking at some substantial money.
Well, we do go after, we've been going after the food trucks more. We've gotten them to register now. We've been going after a couple of there were a couple, I can't mention them by name, but there were a couple of other local restaurants that were not paying, claiming that they were not preparing on site. But we have followed up with those. I've encouraged Lori and Linda both to be a little more aggressive on that. So I think we are, but we're not going after the home-based at this point. But we can, give us the names and we'll send an email.
And as a participant in many outside, out of Hampshire craft fairs and vendor fairs and shows like that, almost all of them with the registration form, put the sales tax form pre-filled out. And either the site to where to go pay it and here's how much you should be charging, or here's the form, send it in with a check because you owe us.
And I think Jamie's real good about that with the farmer's market, but we can verify that. You're not? Okay, we'll check out that.
No.
And I suspect that some of the vendors at the Christmas market probably also didn't register, but.
And I specifically asked her, can you make sure that you include the form to make it easier and so that they understand that they have to pay the sales tax?
Okay, I'll follow up with Jeannie.
Yeah, I go with Trustee Krajewski. I don't know that what's that phrase? The squeeze is worth the effort, or the juice is worth the squeeze, I guess is the way they say it. I don't know, I'm bad at sayings, but it's
say we don't
a lot of effort in going after people that are trying to just supplement stuff out of their home by stuff we're not talking about businesses that are making thousands. Right. I'm not assuming they're making thousands of dollars and doing something out of their home. They've got a passion, they're trying to sell or do something. Maybe their situation changed and they're trying to do something out of a home-based business, right? And so they're able to do it. I just wonder if that's what we want to do.
Yeah, I don't know whose call that is. I mean, whether we pursue them or not, is that a collective board decision? Or, I mean, I don't think it's totally administrative, is it? But I think that's something we should think about, whether we really want to pursue home-based businesses to try to collect. Because even at what, $100,000, we're going to get $1,000, Jay? Is that, or Lori, is that the number? We get 1% basically, right? So, I mean, to make it a number, I think that would even be, you're talking about having a million plus in sales to get to $10,000. I just don't
go after the small home-based businesses. I think we should at least be proactive in our events for outside people that come to our town.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
I think that's like having those best practices in the forums and things in the holiday market and those type of things. Absolutely. That's different than us going to the state to say these home-based businesses may not be paying sales tax.
Right. And as a representative of BDC, I don't think we want, from a business, if you do business in Hampshire and it's home based, that we come chasing people down.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's the image.
Is there, I know, Lori, you have it in the budget, and it's something that the board talked about and we delayed, or sorry, before I came on the board, it voted for this. And then last year we talked about the delay because of the pandemic. Is that extra 1% in places to eating? Is that something that we're going forward with the recommendation to the board as part of the budget that they say on May 1st that restaurants and businesses add the 2% tax and pass it through to the purchasers, as it were, because it's not the business, it's purchase.
Yeah, yes, Lori mentioned earlier, we'll be bringing that to the board effective May 1st. And it's in this budget.
Yep.
Okay.
So just out of curiosity, I guess this is for Lori and Christine, do we feel like breaking it up into 1% was there's sort of lessons learned, or would have been, because we're probably going to catch some hay again this time, I think, right? So it might have made sense in the future when something like this happens, we just, take the one beating instead of the two beating. What's that?
Rip the Band-Aid off.
Exactly. Just take it all at once. The difference between 1% and 2% mentally to people, it sucks, whatever it is. And I think we're just going to go through it twice, which, that's it.
I think a year ago would have been a little more difficult than this May 1st, though.
Well, when we originally passed it,
Yeah.
had we done 2%,
2 years ago, yeah.
it would have been fine.
Yeah, we should have just bit the bullet, all 2% at once, I think. But lesson learned. We'll get better next time. They will.
Anything else on the funds? Any other announcements?
We made some good notes about things that were missing tonight in questions, so we'll get back to you on all those. And you all do have the police department lease. I emailed it to all of you already.
Thanks. They're not going to read it. I don't read it.
I suspect Trustee Jack might read it.
Yeah, well, perhaps we'll see.
He might have already. He may already have read it.
One of the things that I think we really need to seriously think about as a village is that we got to go for a referendum on some kind for this funding of this police, because every year I've been on this board, the budget for the police just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I know a lot of that is driven by the pensions, but we're talking about increases that far outweigh the CPI and, what we would expect, we're going to grow. But I really do think that we need to go for a referendum to at least help pay for that pension.
I agree.
Yeah, it's a big number.
Ingrid Grove did that 2 years ago and it failed. So
yeah, I would say I agree. I just know our community's history with referendums. I mean,
No, I know.
hell, we tried to have a, save your home from a fire referendum that failed.
I know.
Right?
That's one of my favorite to tell people.
What's that?
Okay, we didn't word it like that. That's
Was
when
it for
they
the fire
turned
department?
Yeah.
on the North Department.
Yeah.
Were those all property taxes, Trustee Kelly?
Yes.
Yeah, it was, we need to have a fire station to help save your life, and that requires some property tax. And everybody said, or not everybody, it
No.
was a close fail, but it still failed.
It's a close fail. That's right.
And
Oh, go ahead, Ryan, sorry.
I think Jay's, again, it doesn't have to be, whatever is the most likely to get passed, right? Whether it's, the sales tax idea like Jay, I like the fact that it's disproportionate. But that number is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's unsustainable.
Is it, so Trustee Jackie, I'd love your opinion, or Jay, or anybody actually, is it easier to go for a referendum? I shouldn't say easier. Is the right thing for us to go for a referendum or suggest a referendum for a tax increase to go for these type of one-offs like the police pension? Maybe we do a sales tax referendum and then we have to come back for a different type of referendum, property tax. Or is it better to do a referendum to move into a home rule community where we have more power over to make those type of decisions that don't require multiple referendums down the road?
Yeah.
I personally think limiting ourselves by Dylan's rule to me is not, it's not as useful as it could be without, being able to go to home rule, I think would make a lot of sense to govern ourselves basically.
Yeah.
But I know it's very unpopular in some circles.
Yeah.
The ICMA would help us with a whole campaign to do that, and the IML would too, but I would say from a voter standpoint, you're basically giving the board full authority. Maybe it shouldn't say unlimited, but pretty much unlimited,
Pretty much
depending on
unlimited,
certain increases per year. Versus, if this may not be the best year to go for a police referendum with all the police reform going on, but I do think in the long run that, especially in this community, a sales tax funded outside this community for the most part, at least 50%.
Half and half, yeah.
Sure.
Probably and hearing what you said earlier about ripping the Band-Aid off, it might make sense to go for the full 1% once rather than go for 0.5%.
I do all one.
Yeah, what I would suggest, if you have a minute, take a look at Geneva's website, just Google Geneva sales tax referendum, and they put together a whole booklet and a marketing campaign. I think they did a really great job. Although I saw Pinker's Rose campaign wasn't bad either, but they were going for a property tax increase for police officers, so that just didn't go well.
And I would even, think about, should the library score some property sometime soon, aren't they gonna go to referendum for construction of their building?
Yep.
And I
And so
believe,
does the Park District plan to go to referendum?
and my inkling says that the school district is gonna go forward with a referendum sometime in the near future as well. So it may be proactive for us to do it sooner rather than later, so there's not, 3 or 4 referendums on the same
Yes.
ballot.
That's smart.
Oh, yeah, no. Okay. If we're doing a referendum for sales tax, we'd have to do it this November, the next chance we would have. Can't prolong it, because even if it passes in November, I think it's January activation date.
What kind of elections are this November?
But
Are there elections this November?
sure, there's
No.
something.
Oh,
Somebody-
yeah, but nothing major.
Nothing.
Not the state or nothing in Congress isn't. No, we're in between.
2 years. Didn't know we had anything on the call. Haven't been in Illinois for a while, I guess.
There'd be an election. Maybe the only thing on the Hampshire ballot is the referendum for the sales tax. Most likely, but yeah, there'll be an election in November. The village of Hampshire for something in the state of Illinois. Absolutely.
And we'll look into it.
Can I do just a quick report on the other professional services that's in the general fund?
Sure.
We talked about giant number. So during the process of putting this together, we determined that A5 was accidentally charged to the general fund. That's going to hotel motel tax.
Oh, that's right.
So that has been reclassified. It just didn't happen before December. And then we had some unusual things in here. The Highland Avenue storm engineering is included in this line item. I'm not sure why it's not in engineering, but we'll fix that. That's in here, the cleaning services that we talked about. And then we've done like some cabling for our computers and that type of stuff. So those are the types of things that are in here. And we have, after the December date, reclassified the A5 branding stuff.
Which is $20,000.
All right.
Thank you all for your time and input.
Anything else?
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. So moved.
Triple.
I have to roll call vote.
Sounded like.
Jackie?
Yes, please.
Kelly?
Aye.
Fine, aye. Motion
Aye,
passed.
Captain.
Oh, let me bang the gavel.
Sleep well.
Yeah.
Take care, everyone. Bye.
See you just.
Thank you.
Good night.